إن الحمد لله نستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله الحمد لله على كل شيء الحمد لله على كل حال رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. The Quran uses repetition to embed key concepts into the consciousness of its listeners. As we constantly read its verses over and over again, we sort of put this message into our heads, and that is the purpose of the Quran's repetition for certain words. For example, the word Allah is repeated roughly 2,800 times. The word Rabb, which means the sustainer, or a word that we use for our Lord, is repeated roughly 950 times. And the word that is repeated the third most, with over 800 mentions roughly, is the word knowledge, or ilm. And so this is what my bayan is going to be about today. Ilm and knowledge, why is it important and what we should do about it. The Quran urges mankind to think, ponder, and reflect, and acquire knowledge that would bring them closer to God and His creation. And so knowledge can be of anything. It can be of science, it could be of technology, history, as well as our deen, Islamic history, as well as, fiqh, any sort of thing. All this constitutes as knowledge. And all knowledge, or most knowledge, is good, and obtaining most knowledge is good as well. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us in many ways, in the way how our bodies and how our minds and everything functions happens for a reason. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created our brains, and humans have evolved as curious creatures. This is the reason why, is for us to crave knowledge, and to crave to obtain more and more knowledge as much as we go, as much as we live. And this is why we as humans should acquire to obtain more and more knowledge as much as we can through our daily lives, whether this be through the Quran, whether this be through our schools, whether this be through any way, shape, or form. Knowledge should always be obtained, as, like I said, this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designed us to be. So where is knowledge important? Well, for one, our deen from the very beginning has encouraged us to obtain knowledge. In the first few ayahs given to the Prophet Muhammad on Laylatul Qadr in the cave, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Alaq, read, in the name of your Lord who has created all that exists. He has created man from a clot. Read, and your Lord is the most generous, who has taught the writing by the pen. He has taught man which he had not known. And so, looking into this, we can sort of see that reading is one of the most fundamental ways of obtaining knowledge. The more we read, the more we learn, the more we learn, the more we grow. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us right here. To read, to learn more, to actively go and seek out knowledge, whether it be through the Quran, whether it be through our daily lives. Constantly just keep reading, obtaining more and more knowledge, and grow your mind, and get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like that. In addition, there's many hadiths in which the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has encouraged us to gain knowledge and to grow our minds. One of them being narrated by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, where the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, one faqih is more formidable against the shaitan than 1,000 devoted worshippers. The word faqih here meaning knowledgeable man. And so this just shows, if we're blindly to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with no knowledge of what we're doing, we're just going through the motions, it's, in a sense, in ways, it's not a waste of our time. But if we're actively searching our knowledge and growing and learning more about what we're doing and learning more about our worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is so much better in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's eyes. The more we learn about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more we learn about His creation, the closer we get to Him. And which is our ultimate goal at the end of the day, to get as close to Him as we can and get into Jannah. In addition, another hadith that I had mentioned, that I will mention, is narrated by Sahal bin Mu'ad bin Anas, who narrated this from his father, that the Prophet Muhammad said, whoever teaches some knowledge will have the reward of the one who acts upon it, without that detracting from his reward in the slightest. So knowledge isn't just something that we can do to benefit ourselves, but something that we can do to benefit society. One of the few sadaqah jariyas, or the good deeds that will continue with us after we die, happens to be knowledge. The more knowledge that we spread and the more knowledge that we teach to others, as well as the knowledge that we obtain, will help us in the grave and help us in the afterlife when we pass away. This is why knowledge is extremely important in our deen. And like I said, whether it be through anything, through religious knowledge, reading the fiqh, whether it be through regular knowledge, reading reading just the Prophet ﷺ's history, the Sunnah, essentially anything, as well as regular knowledge in our daily lives that can help us in any way, like science, for example, how to purify ourselves, how to help people who are sick, or so on and so forth. Any sort of knowledge when it comes to this is beneficial, and all of it is good, and all of it brings us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as we learn more about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His creation. My next part about the khutbah is, outside of the Quran and Sunnah, why is knowledge important? So I've given you a lot of examples of why knowledge is important in our deen and in our religion. But what about outside of our religion? What does it bring us to us as people? Well, for starters, like I mentioned before, knowledge is extremely helpful when it comes to things such as science, where we can learn, for example, how to purify ourselves the proper way, how to keep certain things clean. This can help, health-wise, as well as just about ourselves. Just live to help us live better lives. In addition, how to cure diseases, or certain technologies that we can develop to help make people's lives easier. Knowledge like this and the crave for this sort of knowledge is what helps us make our societies better, what helps us live longer, which helps us to sort of, improve our lives in many sort of ways. And so this is ways how science can help us. But, science is just one of the many facets of knowledge. There's all sorts of knowledge, history, language, etc. There's an infinite amount of knowledge, so much for our, small brains to fit in compared to, the vast world. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course. But one of the important parts that I wanted to bring up was the knowledge that is important about society, and that is what's important to fight hatred and negative stereotypes and biases that we may carry. You see, for as long as we know, hatred was rampant in society, whether it be through racism, sexism, all sorts of forms of hatred. Hatred towards Muslims, hatred towards certain minorities, ethnic, religious, whatever they may be. They've existed. And a lot of times, what people lack in these situations is knowledge. They don't know enough about it. They have either false or fake sort of knowledges, or fake facts, or misinformation. And the way to combat this is through proper knowledge, through proper teaching. One of the biggest examples that we can have is just a few days ago, although technically I shouldn't really be using just a few days ago, but with Black History Month, we learned a lot about the advancements of Black people in America, which were a marginalized community that was held down. And so many negative stereotypes run rampant in our society about them, but we learn more about them. And of course, Black History Month isn't just February, it's all 12 months of the year, but this month sort of emphasizes us to grow our knowledge and to learn more about people. And right now we have Women's History Month, so we're learning more about the advancements of women in society, and fighting the sexist sort of things in our society. And we have all sorts of ways, we have all sorts of movements in which we learn about knowledge. There's a lot of Islamic history that we should be teaching in our schools to combat the Islamophobia and to combat the hatreds and the misinformation that the West has about Muslims. Knowledge helps fight this stuff. The more we know and the more truth we know as Muslims, the better society becomes, as there's less hatred, there's less misinformation, and people truly do understand each other. And it's important to have this knowledge to de-establish the racist, sexist, and other hateful ideologies that exist in our society. And one thing I find so beautiful is that in Islam, when it comes to things such as Black History Month or Women's History Month, oftentimes we hear the names of famous Muslims, like Malcolm X, for example, very famous man, icon, Muhammad Ali, very famous icon. as well as many different people today. Like, for example, the many Sahabiya who put their lives on the line to defend the Prophet, or in fact how the world's oldest university was founded by a Muslim woman, and yet many stereotypes that Muslim women face here in the West, they believe that they're not allowed to be educated. Small stuff like that. When you have misinformation, knowledge, when you have misinformation, people won't really be able to understand. And that is why it is important for us to learn more about other cultures, to sort of break down our misinformation and our negative stereotypes, and to help build society as a whole. So, to sum everything up, the Quran encourages us as mankind to attain knowledge and to gain as much knowledge as we can. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designed our minds through many years of evolution and many years of existing so that the human mind becomes more curious and wants to learn more. And the reason why we learn more is so that we can learn more about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His deen and His creation. And we can do this in order to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From the very beginning, our deen has encouraged us to learn more and to obtain more knowledge. From the first 3 ayahs of the Quran where it said read, as well as many different ahadith that I mentioned in which knowledge is very important. Knowledgeable people are very important in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In addition, when we learn more knowledge, when we learn more, and when we spread this knowledge that we learn helps us as Muslims. This helps us in the grave after we pass away, as this knowledge will, once it spreads and more people learn it, we obtain good deeds. If I tell you something, and if I pass away, whenever I do, and this knowledge spreads, these good deeds will come to me, and it goes for everyone here. And most importantly, this knowledge will all get us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and inshallah gets us all into Jannah. But also, knowledge is important outside of our deen, as mentioned before. With the amount of knowledge that we can spread, we can help improve our lives through ways of science, through ways of communication, as well as helping bridge together misinformation and sort of hatred by knowledge, and spreading this knowledge to help to help people learn more and lower their de-establish their racist, sexist, and other hateful ideologies in society. One other thing that I forgot to mention that I will was that if we really look at it, the time period before Islam was brought to Arabia was called the Jahiliyyah period. And what does that translate to English? It means ignorance. If we really think about it, ignorance is, in a sense, an opposite of knowledge. And similarly, Islam ended Jahiliyyah by bringing knowledge, by bringing this sort of learning. They were no longer living under those mindsets of racism, sexism, tribalism, and whatever they were back then, whatever they were learning and whatever they were worshipping back then. All of that Jahiliyyah had ended once Islam came and brought knowledge and brought the truth to people. And so that's some more food for thought. The last thing I want to mention before I end my bayan was a little story that happened to me, I'd say last year in one of my classes, where I was talking to my history teacher about a certain subject I knew about as a kid. Now this subject, it's knowledge, but it's not necessarily information that, more just common information that people can discuss about. And I happened to know a lot about it, and it was in the curriculum at the time. So I was just discussing it with him a lot, and because I got excited. This is something that I know a lot about, and I was mentioning everything I learned since I was a kid about it, and eventually I thought, oh wow, I'm saying a lot. So I told my professor, I'm sorry, I'm saying a lot right now. It's just this is something I'm really excited about and I know a lot about. And he told me, Zoraiz, never apologize for having more knowledge than other people in the room. And this is something that I thought of when I was writing this khutbah. Because oftentimes, we hear people talk more about things than they know. And this is why it's also important for us to have knowledge, to actually spread this knowledge and to help show people what the truth is. Because, like I said, in this time especially, misinformation is rampant, spreads everywhere. And to combat misinformation is the truth and actual knowledge that we learn. With that, I'd like to end. Thank you very much. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله إن الله غفور رحيم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله الذي بعث لنا في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له القوي المتين، وأشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله سيد المرسلين صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه أجمعين. أما بعد، فيا معشر المسلمين، اعلموا أن الله تعالى فصل لنا أصول الدين في كتابه المبين، وكمل لنا الفروع بلسان رسوله الصادق الأمين، واستنبط لنا الجزئيات منهما 4 من المجتهدين، فتمام الدين كتاب الله وسنة رسوله، وما استخرج منهما بالفقه المتين، وما يرى فيكم غيرها بدعات مخترعات وهي من أعظم السيئات. وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: ما أحدث قوم بدعة إلا رفع مثلها من السنة، فتمسك بسنة خير من إحداث بدعة. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام: أوصيكم بتقوى الله والسمع والطاعة وإن كان عبدا حبشيا، فإنه من يعش منكم فسيرى اختلافا كثيرا، فعليكم بسنتي وسنة الخلفاء الراشدين المهديين، تمسكوا بها وعضوا عليها بالنواجذ، وإياكم ومحدثات الأمور، فإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة. قال الله سبحانه تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ما آتاكم الرسول فخذوه وما نهاكم عنه فانتهوا واتقوا الله إن الله شديد العقاب. بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعنا وإياكم منه بالآيات والذكر الحكيم. إنه تعالى جواد كريم قديم ملك بر رؤوف رحيم ورب حليم. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا كما أمر، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له إرغاما لمن جحد به وكفر، وأشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله سيد الخلائق والبشر. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد نور القلب وقرة العين وعلى آل محمد. فيا أيها المشتاقون إلى رؤيا جماله صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما، خصوصا منهم ذي الأصل العريق أمير المؤمنين سيدنا أبي بكر الصديق رضي الله تعالى عنه، وعلى الزاهد الأواب أمير المؤمنين سيدنا أبي حفص عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله تعالى عنه، وعلى جامع القرآن كامل الحياء والإيمان أمير المؤمنين سيدنا عثمان بن عفان رضي الله تعالى عنه، وعلى أسد الله الغالب أمير المؤمنين سيدنا علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله تعالى عنه، وعلى تمام العشرة المبشرة، وعلى سائر الصحابة والتابعين رضوان الله تعالى عليهم أجمعين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين، اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين، واخذل الكفرة والمبتدعة والمشركين، وكن اللهم حافظهم وموئدهم وناصرهم يا رب العالمين ويا خير الناصرين. اللهم شتت شمل أعداء الدين ومزق جمعهم يا مبيد الظالمين. اللهم انصر من نصر دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، واخذل من خذل دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، واجعل اللهم آمنة مطمئنة سائر بلاد المسلمين، واكتب اللهم الستر والسلامة والعافية علينا وعلى عبيدك الحجاج والغزاة والمسافرين في برك وبحرك من أمة محمد أجمعين. وربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة واغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين، والحمد لله رب العالمين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله العلي العظيم يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. هي للصلاة هي للصلاة هي للفلاح هي للفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. والسماء بنيناها بأيد وإنا لموسعون والأرض فرشناها فنعم الماهدون ومن كل شيء خلقنا زوجين لعلكم تذكرون ففروا إلى الله إني لكم منه نذير مبين ولا تجعلوا مع الله إلها آخر إني لكم منه نذير مبين كذلك ما أتى الذين من قبلهم من رسول إلا قالوا ساحر أو مجنون أتواصوا به بل هم قوم طاغون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين فتول عنهم فما أنت بملوم وذكر فإن الذكرى تنفع المؤمنين وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون ما أريد منهم من رزق وما أريد أن يطعمون إن الله هو الرزاق ذو القوة المتين فإن للذين ظلموا ذنوبا مثل ذنوب أصحابهم فلا يستعجلون فويل للذين كفروا من يومهم الذي يوعدون الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم احفظنا من كل بلاء الدنيا وعذاب الآخرة اللهم إنا نسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه نبيك سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأنت المستعان وعليك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم صلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the khutbah. May Allah accept from Zoraiz Hashmi
and Hafiz Abdul Majid. Inshallah, we are monitoring the COVID guideline and the numbers are going down. So inshallah, next week we will have some new policies and we'll communicate with you through email and the WhatsApp group, inshallah. And one more good news that inshallah this Ramadan we will be able to park next to our neighbor, which is the rehab center, and during the Tarawih time. And we hope the Ramadan will start inshallah from April 2nd, and we also are making arrangement for the Eid prayer. So that will be the same place we used to pray every year in the church. So inshallah we'll have that available for us. Okay. Jazakallah.